It's a big sunny gray day here on Cards Hub 365 here on Sports Hub STL. We're brought to you by Gray Bar. Joe Roderick and Ethan Hannaford with you on a Sunday. Cardinals wrap-up play against the Marlins, and we are 1 week away from spring training being over. 11-5 loss on the day. Yeah, very, very much so. Looking forward to the end of spring training and games mattering as we are 11 days away from the home opener here in St. Louis, the season opener here in St. Louis. Welcome on in. Your comments are welcome. I know a whole lot of people are probably lining up wanting to talk about Sonny Gray today. Ethan, before we even went on the air today, people already commenting on Sonny Gray before we even started the show. People are chomping at the bit to talk about it. If you missed it earlier, Ollie Marmol, he announced that Sonny Gray was going to be the opening day starter for the Cardinals. He was not able to last year. And then Sonny goes out and he had a rough one today against the Marlins.
Yeah, that's a polite way of putting it. As far as the fans go, I'll just say this. We're blessed to have passionate fans in St. Louis, and whether things are going good or they're going bad, I would rather have pissed off fans than no fans at all, as some cities out there, that is the issue that they have. So thankful for all of our fans here in St. Louis. And yeah, throw your thoughts, throw your questions in the chat. We would love to discuss. But yeah, it was not a pretty day for Sonny Gray. We'll go through the line here. It ends up being 3 innings, 6 hits, 8 earned runs.
I have before you go on, and I don't mean to cut you off, because I think saying 3 innings for people that didn't watch, for people that did not get a chance to see the game live or maybe just follow the box scores, I kind of put it up, and you can see it on the banner on the bottom if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're just listening to the podcast later on, Sonny Gray recorded 9 outs today. That's the way I look at it. I think that's the way the media should go about saying it. He got 3 outs in the first inning, and then he went out and started the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and did not finish any of those innings after reaching the set pitch count the Cardinals had for him. Yeah,
I mean, that's 100% correct. I didn't even notice that we had the 9 outs there at the bottom. I was reading the box score on MLB.
I just threw it up there. I just threw it up there. Yeah,
that's great. But then also 5 walks, 5 strikeouts, and another home run. I think that's now 6 that he is allowed in 9 innings of work during spring training, or I guess that would be technically 27 outs if we want to get specific with it. But it has not been a kind spring training so far for the Cardinals ace. And I mean, it feels like just the way that the last couple of seasons have gone, it is the most St. Louis Cardinals thing ever to announce that Sonny Gray is going to be your opening day starter, and then he gets absolutely obliterated by the Miami Marlins.
Which way would you have preferred they do it? Because you knew it was happening. Like we've known when I was down there the first week of spring training, the reporters down there were trying to get Ollie to say it then. And they were really trying hard to get him to announce that he was the starter. And Ollie was like, can we get to a game first? Like and then waited several more weeks after that. But it was known. I mean, with his contract, with his status, it was well known that Sonny Gray was going to be the Cardinals starting pitcher on March 27th. There was never a doubt that he was going to be that. So I guess what I ask is, would you rather you announce that before the game and then he goes out and has the outing he does, or would you rather he has the outing he does and then in the post game Ollie goes, yeah, by the way, Sonny's your starter on day one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a tough in between. I mean, it feels like a lose-lose. I mean, when you have a performance like today went, it's like I said, it feels like sometimes there's days where things are just gonna go kind of unfortunately planned, and it felt like this was one of them. I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, but like I know it's a little bit concerning as we speak, just looking at some of the overall numbers that we're seeing right now from Sonny Gray. But I would encourage fans to try their best to be patient. I know that fans probably get so tired of hearing that, But when you look at some of his traditional spring training stats compared to like how he ended up doing that season, it helps, I think, relieve a little bit, because as I saw these numbers coming out, and then you look and you say, oh crap, Sonny Gray has like a 13 ERA in spring training. When you look at some of the traditional springs that he's had, I'm just going to read through a couple of these. In 2017 with Oakland, he had a 15.75 ERA. Now, he only threw 4 innings, but he also had a 6 ERA in 2013. I say that to say, like, in those years, like, Sonny Gray has always been Sonny Gray. He's always been one of the better pitchers in baseball. But just because a bad spring doesn't necessarily mean that it means disaster come opening day, come the regular season. And, we know what Sonny Gray was last year. We know things got a little more, I would say, challenging as the season went on. But this was a guy in large part for the year was not only a number one starter, but he was an ace. I mean, he was an ace for this Cardinals club. And it's the first time that we could say that, it felt like, in St. Louis since, primetime Adam Wainwright, in my person, maybe Carlos Martinez, but I don't even know if I would say that Martinez was at the level that Sonny Gray looked at times last year. So I know that it is definitely frustrating to see an outing like this today, but it is the spring. This is where guys are working on stuff. Sonny Gray has been on his own individually based plan, I think is how Katie Wu worded it on Twitter earlier. It doesn't mean that you don't like to see results at some point, especially when it's coming from your number one starter. But, you could have to take everything with a grain of salt in spring. And that's one of the reasons that I'm looking forward to getting into opening day, into the regular season, because then we can say, okay, this is what they are. Right now, we're kind of in this in between. Is this what Sonny Gray is? Is this what, the offense is going to be? Like, I'm looking forward to being done with that, Joe.
And Ethan, if you want to restart or just refresh your camera, it froze on us there.
At least I'm smiling when it's frozen.
So the thing about Sonny Gray, and this was my concern when they signed him, and you saw the flashes of it last year. There's when I was at this was the All-Star game. I think it would have been the 2023 All-Star game. So that was in Seattle that year. And Sonny Gray was on that All-Star team. He was on the All-Star team that year for the Twins. And I was just kind of walking around. I wasn't really trying to interview anybody. And I just happened to be at Sonny Gray's table without any thought in my mind that this was a future pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. But I remember whoever the reporter was that came up to him and talked to him said to him, Sonny, you're kind of like the Olympics. Every 4 years, you're in the Cy Young running and you're making the All-Star game. And I go back and I look at his stats. And if you look at them, yes, every 4 years, he is lights out and he is awesome. And again, Cy Young numbers, All-Star numbers. And again, that was 2023. So we got to wait 2 more years after this one to see that level of Sonny Gray, I guess, if we want to see it. You saw the flashes of it last year. You saw the games where he went out and was 6-7 innings where he looked unhittable or no runs allowed, and he looked really good. Carlos, I don't know if I would compare the Carlos Martinez comparison. Sonny Gray always seems hittable, but Sonny Gray seems like he has the intelligence on the mound to not allow runs. He'll give you 1 hit, but that's all you're getting that inning. Yeah. Carlos Martinez was in that category of guys that you never knew when you were going to see him go out and possibly throw a no-hitter.
Yeah.
That was Carlos Martinez, that you were just waiting for him to go out and one day throw a no-hitter. I don't think there was ever a time last year where Sonny Gray started a game and I thought, hey, we might see a no-hitter today. That's what you got with Carlos Martinez.
And to be funny with that, there were, I think, was it at least twice last year that Sonny Gray took no hitters into the 6th or 7th inning, right? I remember at least once that he took into the 7th inning. So it's ironic that you say that, but he had a couple that went pretty far last year.
A lot of comments. We will try to get to those as we roll on here. Randy chiming in saying, I haven't watched a lot, but from what I've seen, the two best pitchers have been McGreevy and Libator. So I'm glad that this is the year that we're going with a youth movement. Oh, wait, they still are going with a youth movement. If you look at the age of every one of their starters on opening day, it's a youth movement. I think they will have one of the youngest lineups in all of baseball when the season starts. They will end up, I think, by the time the season ends, they'll probably have one of the youngest rotations in all of baseball. But the McGreevy start on Friday, was it? I think it's just that much more elevated now. When you saw Palante again, not his worst start, not a great start, but it just kind of was a ho-hum start for Palante yesterday. And then you see Gray today, that you look and you say, okay, if you want to be serious about winning, do you put the best pitcher in spring in your rotation to start the year? And that's Michael McGreevy.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think the frustrating part about that is if the question is, if we're talking about winning, then why are we talking about Andre Palante being the one to lose the spot and not Miles Michaelis? Right. I mean, I guess that's the main one, I guess, that you would ask the question about. And it's because the Cardinals aren't going to eat the final year of that contract. They're not going to release Miles Michaelis. They have never been a team traditionally to eat contracts when things are going south towards the end of careers or towards the end of those contracts. So it is an interesting situation as far as like, how do the Cardinals go about it? How do the Cardinals handle a red hot pitcher in Michael McGreevy? I think that Brendan Schaefer nailed it. I think it was on Friday's episode, maybe it was Thursday's episode, where he was talking about how, yes, like on opening day, this is likely what the starting rotation is going to look like. It is likely going to be Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Steven Matz, Miles Michaelis, and Andre Palante. But that doesn't mean that in a month, that's what that's going to look like. You know, I mean, you hate to say it, but injuries are part of the game. And the Cardinals have had some guys in their rotation that have had a history with injuries. So, and this was an issue last year for the Cardinals. Last year, there was no depth. It was at the point where Matthew Liberatore was having to relieve, and then 2 days later, having to make a spot start and throw the first 2, 3, 4 innings of a game, which was completely unfair to him. It just goes to show, though, how desperate the organization was in a place of they did not have anyone that they felt comfortable with down in Memphis to be able to come up and make a spot start. I'm very happy that the Cardinals are in this position this year where they are compared to last year. There are times when I get frustrated with this too, where I'm like, man, why is Michael McGreevy? How could they not have found a way for Michael McGreevy to be in the rotation this year? But at the same time, I understand that it is a long season. Things could look differently in a month than they do right now, in 2 months than they do from a month. There's going to be, if we're looking at a situation where it's June or July and we still haven't seen Michael McGreevy get opportunities, then maybe I'm probably a little bit more frustrated. But
if that's the case, that means the 5 starters that you're going with to start the year have been really good and healthy. Because I don't think it's any shock that, I mean, it shouldn't come in. I mean, Michael McGreevy right now, if he's not in that rotation, he is the very next guy up. The only way that McGreevy isn't the 6th, if he doesn't start with the team, the only way that he is not the 6th person to start a game for the St. Louis Cardinals this year is if something happens pregame and you just have to throw out a Libator or go a bull. I mean, if there is just some freak thing that happens the day of, if there is going to be a 6th starter or somebody to make a spot start, I mean, it would be McGreevy. That would be that guy for this. Comments rolling in and continue to do so here on Cards Hub 365, presented by Gray Bar. Talking about this, and Mary has chimed in there saying he's working on missing the zone and that but he's missing badly at doing that. I will say this. John Denton had a tweet during the game today in saying that his sweeper is going to be something to watch. It was one of the most dominant in 2024 when Sonny Gray threw his 4-seam fastball. Opponents hit 331 with 6 home runs off that pitch in 2024 when he threw that 4-seam fastball. When he has 5 walks like he does today, that just means that guys are up there. They are not if they see that four-seam fastball, they know it's not going to be in there for a strike unless it's just meat that they're going to hit, because Sonny Gray cannot afford to throw that four-seam fastball for a strike because it gets hit. So that four-seam fastball is ideally setting up the sweeper. That's what he's trying to do with that. And if he doesn't have control over all of those pitches, then the walk totals like today are going to pile up. So there is a little bit of thought process going into this with that. You don't want him to throw the four-seam fastball for strikes, but you need the other pitches to be in the zone.
Yeah, and people, how many walks did he have today? Did he have five walks today? He had 5 walks today. I mean, yes, is that concerning? Absolutely. But let's keep in mind, he has 6 now on the year in spring training. So he had 1 walk going into the year prior to today's start, if my numbers are correct. So, I mean, is it a concern? Yes, but like I said earlier, I mean, you look at the history. This is a guy that has had his struggles in spring training in prior years. But this is a guy, regardless of that has consistently been a very solid pitcher at the major league level. He has not traditionally been one to be wild, to miss the strike zone. So am I going to freak out about 1 start? No, I'm not going to. Did it look good? Absolutely not. It looked terrible. It looked awful. I mean, he was getting hit all over the ballpark, but the fastball velocity wasn't necessarily down today. It was mixing all around. I mean, it was anywhere between 89 and 92 all day long, the 4-seam was. And we saw that in all 4 innings of work, I guess, all 9 outs of work. So as long as there's not something, in my opinion, like, oh man, the velo was really down today, or something was looking really off, I don't think there's any reason to freak out outside of that. The only reason that I guess you could make it up in your mind is that because we are getting so close to opening day, he probably has 1 more start.
I think after today, he definitely started 1 more game. Yes.
Yeah. So if he has, maybe that makes you a little bit nervous, like, oh man, we're kind of getting close now. But listen, I think I talked about on the last episode that I was on, when it's guys that have a track record of struggling, I feel like it's a lot easier for you to start freaking out about spring trainings. Hint why everyone's panicking about the Cardinals' lack of offense here in spring trainings, because it sucked the last 2 years. But with a guy like Sonny Gray, the track record is there that he is going to be a guy that's going to be worthy of being near the top of your rotation. It's been a rough spring, yes, but until this is a consistent pattern, I'm not going to freak out about it.
Somebody before we move on from the pitching, somebody did ask, where is Carlos Martinez these days? This is last time pitched in Major League Baseball was 2022. That year he had an 80-game suspension and an 85-game suspension, both in that season. Pitching down in the Mexican League the past few years, and it just so happened was released on March 13th. Just a few days ago, he was just released by his most current team down in the Mexican League. So that is where Carlos Martinez is these days, for those wondering, as his name got brought up in the show today. Hey, we are sponsored by our friends over at Gray Bar. Gray Bar, are you suffering from supply chain issues and they're disrupting your operations? Well, have no fear, because Gray Bar has you covered. You can rely on their nationwide logistics network to get what you need, where they need, when they need to get there, all within budget. A trusted and leading North American distributor of electrical communications, data networking, and industrial products. Here's what you need to do. Visit graybar.com to start an order today. That's graybar.com, your distributor for electrical and data needs. Joe Roderick, Ethan Hannaford here with you on Cards Hub 365 today. There's been some other discussion in the YouTube chat today, and continue on with that as long as you guys are bringing it. Say we got nowhere to be till about 6 o'clock tonight after once the selection show rolls around. But now with another rough game for Michael Ciani, and you're seeing more, you're starting to see another hard hit ball by Luken Baker. Those spots in the bench are starting to take shape, and it does come down to, I think, one guy there's one spot there at this moment, and it's not Michael Ciani that I think is going to be getting that 4th spot right now. I think it's between guys like Fermin or a guy like a Barrio or Hellman, I guess, is one that you're throwing on there too, just because of his versatility.
Let's go ahead and let's kind of concrete out who we think the guys that are for sure going to be locks that aren't going to be everyday starters are going to be, right? So I mean, like if Victor Scott is in center field, that means that what Alec Burleson's probably going to be considered. Now it's going to rotate. It's not going to be the same 9.
And that's where, that's I kind of the way it's going in my head. If I'm thinking 4 spots, Victor Scott gets one of those 4 spots, even though he might be a starter on opening day.
Okay.
Victor Scott in my head is one of those 4 spots because Burleson has a spot on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Donovan, Gorman, Nootbaar, they all have spots on the team. And that's kind of that rotation of those guys. So Victor Scott has earned his way onto the team and a starting spot, which then throws everything else out of whack.
So we have an outfield spot that is designated for either Victor Scott or Alec Burleson, but is going to be
Brendan Donovan or Lars Nootbaar. Yeah.
Right. But like we know, like you said, we know.
Yes.
It depending on who is starting in center field, like it puts Alec Burleson's playing time in question, which gives me a migraine almost. Yep. But then outside of that, who are going to be the guys that are going to be on your bench? And that's the question that we have to start asking is, Michael Ciani is definitely one that I think going into the season, a lot of people expected him to be in that spot, but then you kind of start to think it out. And you're like, okay, well, one of those bench spots has to be designated for one of your catchers. So let's go ahead and throw Pedro Pajes there. So now we have 2 guys. We have the outfield spot, and then we have Pedro Pajes. Then you start to get into the infield, and I personally think that Thomas Saggese is worthy of one of those spots. It kind of gets a little bit foggy. I know some people say, like you said, Fermin, Barrero.
But that's the thing. Yeah, Lucan Baker, I think, has earned the spot. I mean, you need a right-handed bat on the bench.
Here's the problem with Lucan Baker, and unless this is solely his place, which it's not like you're saying to yourself, you hate to say this, but it's not like you're saying to yourself, Lucan Baker is the future of first base for the St. Louis Cardinals. So am I okay putting him in that bench bat? Yes, I am. I view Thomas Saggese in a very similar way. When I look at Thomas Saggese, I see screaming out at me, right-handed hitter that is a contact guy that can play all over the infield. I don't see him as a guy that's going to be starting for you. He's going to be your structured in starting second baseman or third baseman for the future of this ball club. I'm very okay with him being on the bench. Either one of those guys, I think, could fit that spot very well. The reason that I like Thomas Saggese more in this situation is because he could play more spots on the infield, as to where, you already have Wilson Contreras, you already have Alec Burleson that are going to be able to play first base. So quite literally, the only reason that Lucan Baker would be on this roster would be a bench bat.
Yeah, and I think I have no problem with as many lefties as you have in the lineup right now. I have no problem with him just to come in and bat for a Victor Scott in a situation, or if you're facing a lefty that Nolan Gorman can't handle, he goes in there and he's batting for Nolan Gorman in a late game situation where you're looking up. And I know the big thing with Lucan Baker is, well, if you put him in the game, then you need to put somebody in to run for him if he gets on base. Lucan Baker isn't in there to hit singles. He's not in there to work counts and slap the ball into right field and get a little base knock to start a rally. Lucan Baker is the rally.
You're telling me Lucan Baker's not a contact hitter? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
It's not that he's not a contact. I'm just saying, he's not going to Luis Ariza a ball over the shortstop's head and then work his way around the bases. And today, Lucan Baker hit a ball 417 feet that went off his bat at 112 miles an hour. That's Lucan Baker is going into the game to put baseballs into the visiting bullpen if he comes into a late game spot, and then you figure it out after he's done rounding the bases. So that is in the DH world, you can have that spot on your bench.
So let's say that you have Lucan Baker then, who is your bench bat. He's not going to play anywhere in the field. He's going to be solely your bench bat. As far as the outfield goes, You have Nootbaar for sure locked up, Walker locked up, Burleson locked up, and then you have Victor Scott, and I guess you have Brendan Donovan. So it's not like, and the reason that I'm saying this it's not really a question, it's more a statement. If they do go with Luke and Baker, it's not like they would be losing out on that extra outfielder that they have, because they have so much versatility with guys that can play in different spots. The only area I guess you could say they'd be dropping off is in the quality of defense that they would have from their outfield. Now, I'm not saying that these guys that they have are bad defensive outfielders, but nobody is at the level of Michael Ciani. I would say even Victor Scott is not at the level of Michael Ciani. I think he can get there, but in his time in the majors last year, he was nowhere near Michael Ciani. So that would be my only concern with that. But when you're coming off of 2 seasons where offense was the primary issue, I'm okay with that if it means having a guy that is going to be a formidable threat on your bench like a Luke and Baker.
And yeah, you have a lot of the other names that we've mentioned too for that 4th spot, whether it's Jose Barrero or Jose Fermin or Michael Hellman. We've mentioned all those guys. They are guys that can play all over the place, and again, are guys that you can slide in there in late game situations. But we've seen, and I think we're at a point now where St. Louis baseball fans should be used to what DH baseball looks like.
Right.
You don't have to. We're far away from the days of Tony La Russa, Mike Matheny double switches that we don't have to. That's not a thing that you have to worry about anymore in baseball.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's a very different day and age of baseball now. So I mean, you nailed it on the head right there. I'm curious of, Brian had a comment asking, saying Sajaci needs everyday time. You mentioned those guys like Jose Fermin, Barrero. Where do you see that? Like, would you rather see one of those guys over a Thomas Sajaci for that middle infield utility kind of contact?
Yeah.
You would?
I with Sajaci, and with the way I think the organization views Sajaci, I think that he gets that. If they are impressed, Barrero is only 26 years old, which I guess is old consider for a prospect. This is a guy that was at one point the Reds prospect minor league player of the year, and a guy that maybe he's having kind of his second coming in his career.
You said Sajaci or Barrero?
Barrero. Barrero
right.
For this. So maybe that's a spot. Jose Fermin is a guy that you look at and you go, okay, he's just a guy. I think of this, he's just a fill-in guy
he doesn't even play. He doesn't play very good defense either. So it's not like he's a specialist there either. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if it does come down to a Fermin or a Hellman where you're giving Sajaci and Barrero starts every day in Memphis.
Okay, yeah, and
so they're playing constantly.
That's really where it comes down to, is how do you value those guys? Because I think we know the direction that the organization is going in as far as how they view certain pieces, and I think, like, if you were to ask Chaim Bloom or John Mozeliak, like, okay, in your eyes, like, you close your eyes, you look out 2 years in advance. What does your like 1 through 9 look like ideally? And I think they probably have a picture of that. And my thing is, I don't know now. I don't think that either Sajaci or Barrero are in that. That's why I'm more so okay with them being a bench piece. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't try to develop everyone to the best of their abilities. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I feel as though Thomas Sajaci, who has had a good spring, let's see here, 8 hits and 30 at bats. He has a double, a home run, 733 OPS. Strikeout number, he's at 9, 3 walks. So, but overall, he's had a pretty good spring. We know that he was really good in the Arizona Fall League last year. My question with him is kind of like, what do you do with him? You just let him wait in what else does he need to do to prove that he, I think, is ready to be on this roster? This was a guy that if Nolan Arenado wasn't here, we weren't asking any questions about Thomas Sajaci. In fact, they were talking about Thomas Sajaci being a guy that was going to be getting consistent time at second base, kind of getting into the mix. So because Arenado's here, now we're talking about Sajaci even not making the roster. I don't know. That's kind of where my question mark comes in there.
John Denton just killing it on the coverage today. He just tweeted out 10 minutes ago. We're circling all the way back to Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray spoke to the media after the game today saying, "This is my 15th spring training. I've done it all. I've had incredible spring trainings where I didn't give up a run for however many games. I've had had horrible seasons. I've had horrible spring trainings and had great seasons." So Sonny Gray does not seem concerned about his outing today. So there you go. If you're wondering how Sonny Gray feels about it, he doesn't seem worried.
Let me just I shared a couple of them earlier, but I want to go through and just give you, because I mean the numbers really do back this. I'll just quickly go through his ERAs from his spring trainings here, just from top to bottom. 5.4, 6, 3.48, 3.48, 7.5, 5.6, 15.7, 1.9, 0.9, 5.2, 4.5, 0, 1.8, 0, and 13.9. I mean, like, it's been all over the place. Like I said earlier, this is a guy that has been around for a long time. Who cares what he's doing in spring training if it's been a consistent, successful showing at the major league level? Like you said, yes, maybe Olympic style as far as when he is like the ace, the star, the all-star, but he's been a very serviceable guy for a long time in the major leagues. That's why I am not concerned at all about this start.
Yeah, that's we'll see. It's, as long as an injury doesn't pop up,
yes,
he's your starter. He's
yes.
your starter on on the 27th against the Twins. So that's what you have to look forward to for the Cardinals. Appreciate all of the comments today. Love all of the interaction from the YouTube chat. Keep it coming each and every day here on Cards Hub 365, because that's when we will be coming to you each and every day for the entire calendar year here on Sports Hub STL. Busy night of lots of sports. If you are a sports fan, a huge Selection Sunday show coming your way a little after 6 o'clock once the brackets are released, talking about all of the local teams and any of the other big matchups, and then Blues Hub Weekly late tonight after the Blues game as well. So a busy day here on Sports Hub STL. If you haven't done so yet, like and subscribe to the YouTube page and make sure you get those alerts every time we go live. Until tomorrow, though, for us here on the Cards Hub 365, he is Ethan Hannaford. I'm Joe Roderick. We've been brought to you by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL.